Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. Robert along with Sports Radio 610, Shaun Bijani. And if you're new to the show, welcome aboard. 45 years in journalism between the two of us and over 35 covering sports in the Houston area. And Shaun, the Texans' first preseason game is Thursday. Unfortunately, bad news Monday. Tytus Howard and his new contract will be out with a broken hand. What are the repercussions, Shaun? And is this an Altuve deal where he might miss a month and a half, but maybe just 2 games, I guess, in that scenario?
Well, they said 4 to 6 weeks. So they also left open the opportunity for him to be ready for week 1 of the regular season. So it doesn't sound like it was, one of the little smaller bones, towards the back end of your hand. Rather, something, bigger, the big part of your hand. And we don't know how he did it. At least I haven't heard or read anything to this point, but 4 to 6 weeks, possibly ready for week 1. What that looks like personnel wise. Tytus had actually left practice like early, I want to say sometime last week. Maybe it was just to get Fant some reps, probably, the case.
Yeah.
And so Fant had gotten some opportunities there. Looked okay. Kind of like, I think I used the analogy with you the other day. It's kind of like a Major League Baseball umpire, like the complete opposite of Angel Hernandez. Like if you don't really see him, then he's probably doing a pretty good job otherwise. But Fant got first team reps today, but they also worked in Austin Deculus, a second-year tackle whom the Texans drafted last year, and he was banged up most of the season, but just a behemoth of a human being. Like, this guy is gigantic. If you've never seen him in person, he looks like an ogre, and that's no offense to him. I mean, he is just rock solid.
You forget he's there because we have seen so little of him, and we didn't even think about him in all these scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited because, he's actually looked good, and I'm happy that he's healthy in camp this year. He's just so big, man, and I hope he does really, really well. He got some first-team reps today in practice for the first time all camp. And then, Tyler Beach, who'd filled in spot duty here and there, in rotations. To be honest with you, had probably gotten some first-team reps because Tytus, like I mentioned, I think he'd sat out like a day or something. Didn't miss a full day, but maybe like the second half of team. So he got some reps last week. Beach got some run again.
How about Charlie Heck? How serious? He's been on the PUP list with the foot issue. How serious is that? Do you know?
Well, I haven't heard anything specific about the foot, but obviously I know he's been on the PUP list since camp started. And to be quite honest with you, like I see him sometimes, but most of the time I don't. I was looking for him today. I was the first one on the field today. And I saw Tegan Quatoriano, Brevin Jordan. Those guys were getting their side work, the rehab work in on a side field. A number of players like Will Anderson, they came out getting their work early. I looked everywhere for Charlie Heck. Didn't see him. So he's been MIA. Look, maybe he's staying in, got some treatment this morning. I was looking for Tytus too. I knew Tytus had hurt his hand on Saturday at practice, and I fully expected to see him out there, have it wrapped up, and at least watching and taking in like mental reps and stuff today. But
sure,
he was getting surgery. So there's that. No, I mean, you're going to be looking at George Fant, Austin Deculus, Tyler Beach, right tackle in the rotations on Thursday night. And you just kind of hope for the best that the rest of the offensive line stays healthy between now and the regular season until Tytus comes back, certainly.
Yeah, you mentioned George Fant, I should say. I'm confused. I'm mixing the two of them up, but you mentioned him. His story is wild. He played basketball, not football, for 4 years at Western Kentucky, if people don't know that. And his friends and coaches urged him to play football, but he refused. He got letters from multiple NFL teams in 2015 asking if he'd give pro football a try, but he threw the letters away, according to what I read. And then he changed his mind on football after weighing his options of either playing basketball overseas in Poland or trying football with a wife and a child to take care of. He chose football. He used his 5th year of eligibility at Western Kentucky to play tight end, not tackle. Then studied tapes of Jimmy Graham, another football to basketball guy. He goes undrafted in 2016, but the Seahawks took a shot on him. O-line coach Tom Cable, who's very good at this, converted him to tackle. He's been known to do these type of reclamations, and then shot in 516 snaps with the Jets last year. Pro Football Focus gave him a 48.4 grade. Not good, but the year before, he had a 71 grade on 889 snaps. he ranked first in least sacks allowed of 71 eligible tackles. So he does have a history of being a pretty solid tackle. He's not some guy that's just a scrap-heap guy with no experience. Like, if you don't know his story, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to ask him about that. Certainly the basketball angle as well, because that's really, really interesting. And being so young with a family and making those types of decisions, that's always an interesting thing. Last year, though, he wasn't really healthy with the Jets, I don't think either. He played in like 7 or 8 ball games, and the numbers that he'd put up the previous 2 years with the Jets since coming over to them from the Seattle Seahawks, they were much better. Look, he's been a serviceable guy. Could be a starter in this league and certainly a good, viable backup. And I mean, man, you think about it, as good as we felt the night of the draft when the Texans took both Juice Scruggs and Jarrett Patterson for the center position. And obviously Patterson, can be a swing guy too, as well as Scruggs, play a little guard. Man, that Michael Dieter signing and George Fant and them kind of beefing up the depth at the offensive line position, you cross your fingers, you hope they don't need so much more of it, but good thing they did make those decisions when they did, because, they brought in Fant late, and it wasn't as if they foresaw something like this happening with Tytus. I mean, they make him, a top 5, top 4 paid right tackle in the league. You'd like to have the guy out there week 1, but you could do a heck of a lot worse than a guy like George Fant, who, look, he's got good size to him. I can't speak too much to what I've seen from him in terms of pass protection, because to be quite honest with you, especially here of late, the last 3 practices specifically, they've kind of walled off what they're doing offensively. And I really think that's due to them being so close to Thursday night's preseason opener. They're doing a lot more specific install. They want us to see a lot less. But what I have noticed in terms of run blocking, he's looked really good. Beach has looked much improved. Even Austin Deculus has looked pretty good today, especially. I got to see a lot of him in his first team reps, and he worked in with the number 2s as well. Looks really good, really strong coming off the ball. If there's anything I'd say that I'd be a little bit worried about in terms of what the Texans would like to do in the run game, and, having some new guys in there, is getting to the second level. I noticed specifically today with Austin Deculus, made a great initial block on a play action rollout by Stroud, made a great initial block, but when he got to the second level, and he did get to the second level, he just had a really difficult time holding and really just reaching the safety, whoever it was. And so that would be just something I'm kind of initially worried about, but that's why you're glad you have guys like Singletary and Pierce in the backfield that can make guys miss, or just simply, if you're Pierce in his case, like we've been used to see him, do over just the last season, his first one, lower the shoulder and mow right through him.
Yeah, the second level is going to be key with this Bobby Slowick offense for sure. And also, I feel like I buried the lead, but Shaun, people were going to want to know about this, that CJ Stroud was named starting quarterback Thursday. It's the preseason. So, but we knew this was coming. Have you seen improvements with Stroud since our last show back on Thursday?
Here's the thing. I haven't really seen him have a really bad practice. Like, look, he had the 2 picks last Monday and then threw another interception on Tuesday. Nearly had one picked off today by Christian Harris. Harris, read the play beautifully. The linebackers just kind of dropped to their zone. He was sitting in that little window, just waiting for that slot, to clear out on a little in route. Maybe it was a dig route or something like that. And, Stroud was looking, I think, at a crosser, and Harris just read it perfectly and put both hands up and kind of ended up batting it down. And Harris was mad at himself, thought he should have had the pick. But, it's things like that where, Stroud, they're not necessarily bad decisions. It's maybe just a little bit of timing, with these routes and his throws.
I'm also wondering, I wanted to ask you about this because we have seen the interceptions throughout camp. How much is it timing? And then how much is it is this Slowick offense is a lot for these guys? I know he's trying to ease them into it, but it's a lot. And is there stuff where, he's just trying to, or these other quarterbacks are just trying to figure out what's going on, and maybe it's coming at him a little bit fast, right?
The interceptions, to be quite honest with you, I don't think they're really at all about making poor decisions or guessing or just bad reads. I just think they're really good plays by the defense. And I think that you're seeing Stroud and Mills in this offense really work on trying to take some shots and figure out what they can and can't do in this offense, which is, again, it sounds so blanketed because, to be honest with you, you could say the same thing about any offense. It's predicated on timing, good route running, the attention to small details. Every coach speaks the same way. But it is so true, especially with younger quarterbacks and learning a new system. Those things do matter. And quarterbacks are going to take their shots. That's the first thing that I noticed, even in minicamp, when we had an opportunity to go out there and watch Stroud for the first time. Dude was taking shots in 7-on-7 and situational stuff, marching up down the field. He's not a guy that was going to pull the ball down and just try to make a play with his legs, though we've seen that a little bit more here in training camp. I think because he's going to need to do that stuff, I think he's testing the waters a little bit. And then, too, it's hard to tell because a lot of times the defense, the pass rush is getting to Stroud, but you're not going to touch the quarterback. They're not going to play they're not going to blow the play dead. D'Amico wants to see, Bobby Slowick wants to see the play finish out. So what looks like a pretty good scamper might have actually resulted in a sack if you're allowed to touch the quarterback. But I don't think at all, honestly, that this is something that's overwhelming the quarterbacks. Nobody's spoken to that, and we've asked about it a couple of times to various different people, and they talked about just quite simply how friendly the system is and how well all of the quarterbacks and the receivers and just the entire offense is taken to it. So keep in mind too, you've got guys in here on every level, really, in every position group that are used to and have experience with a West Coast offense. Right now, these quarterbacks is maybe a little bit different story, but then don't forget about Case Keenum. There's a reason why he's not getting a lot of reps. He's more of a mentor and a coach on the field, and he spoke for the first time today at the podium and reiterated that. And you and I had an exclusive with him earlier this offseason, and what I thought was funny, I know you didn't ask this, but he was asked today, not by me, how would he describe the Bobby Slowick offense? And he thought about it for a second. And I have to ask him later on, like, who first coined this? But he did say exactly what he did with us. This is like the greatest hits of the West Coast offense. And I want to know if he coined that, if Shanahan coined that, Kubiak, Slowick, whoever it was. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, good stuff. Everybody's heard of the 2-minute drill. Shaun, I'm about to hit you with the 1-minute drill, and you get a max of 1 minute to answer these quick questions. At 10 seconds, if we get that far, you're going to hear a ding when time's up. You get a buzzer. You got it?
Got it.
Which Texans offensive player has impressed you most? Go.
Nico Collins. I think people are sleeping on him. You got maybe a bad taste in your mouth over the course of the last 2 years, but by no stretch do I think the first 2 years of a guy's career should define it, especially considering the situation that he was in offensively. He's on his third different offensive coordinator now. Multiple quarterbacks throwing him balls over the last couple of years. Dude has done nothing but make plays in this offense so far. So I think Nico Collins, and especially, for the last 3 practices, I really think has emerged as a number one option on this team for the Texans.
Okay, let's reset the clock. Next question. Which offensive starter worries you?
Ooh, which offensive starter worries me? Nobody really right now for the sake of execution, I would say, aside from maybe Kenyon Green. He needs to be a better pass setter. And it worries me a little bit more because we know a lot less than we think we know about CJ Stroud. So I would say Kenyon Green in that respect, but also Tank Dell, who I think is going to end up being the starting slot receiver for this Texans team. And I just worry about him, for his sustainability and staying healthy. I haven't seen him, really make himself susceptible to taking any really huge hits this camp. But I do worry about it when the bullets are flying for real and safeties are sinking down on this dude and just ready to lay the wood.
Yeah, you got that, but you had a few seconds to go. And just for a few more seconds, you're telling me you think Dell's the starter over Mechie.
Yeah, and I told you John Mechie last week because I thought he had a really, really great week. Tank's been consistent, but man, it doesn't matter who's throwing him the football, Robert. If it's Davis, if it's CJ, they're just finding this dude. And there's a reason. Everybody's talked about it. He just gets open. He made a fantastic play on Saturday and another one today on an intermediate out route. and it was just a perfectly placed ball by CJ, and he high pointed it, came down, chop, 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 got his feet in bounds real quick. And it's just, those are the types of plays in this offense, especially. You're going to see a lot of those out routes, deep intermediate plays like that, crossing routes where you're head to the sideline and there's just a small window for that quarterback to get a guy a ball. That guy's been able to go make a play. And it's been such a long time that we've seen a Texan receiver not named DeAndre Hopkins be that fast and go make those kinds of plays.
All right, let's go for a minute again. Which defensive player impressed you the most?
Christian Harris. He's really been popping to me. I mentioned he almost picked CJ Stroud earlier today. I think it was in the early portion of 11 on 11. The guy's just everywhere. And I think, with this defense specifically asking so much of its linebackers, and I say that because really with both of your defensive ends, they're almost playing wide nines there. They're way out there, the tackles, and you've got your two interior defensive linemen with the linebackers there to read run. But if they read pass, their job is going to be, if it's not in man situations, to drop into zone, keep their eyes up for anything coming out of the backfield, go sideline to sideline. Nobody's been able to do it better and look more natural, athletically and gifted as Christian Harris. This dude looked like he did in his last year at Alabama, where he was just making plays all over the place.
All right, just in the nick of time that time. Let's go to number 4. Which defensive starter worries you? We went with the offensive starter. What's the defensive starter that worries you?
Defensive starter that worries me. I'd probably have to say on the interior, because it's going to be Malik and it's going to be Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins. And I need to see more from Malik Collins. We saw plenty of him last year, but he was a part of one of the worst rush defenses in the entire league last year. And Sheldon Rankins, who's very used to the system coming from, the Jets, Saleh running a similar scheme as D'Amico, was actually really good against the run. And he's known for a pass rusher on the interior and put up some of the best numbers in the entire league when he's on the field, what the run does against the defense versus when he's off and what the run does. So I'm really excited to see the impact that Rankins can have on a guy like Collins, but I need to see a little bit more from Malik before I have the faith that they're going to.
Oh, you got cut off right there at the end. But yeah, that's a good one, because we haven't talked much about Rankins or Collins so far. So I'm glad you brought those guys up. More likely to get a non-special team, well, not just one, more likely to get non-special team snaps. In other words, offensive, defensive snaps. Which one of these two guys more likely to get offensive or defensive snaps than special team snaps? Henry To'oTo'o or Xavier Hutchinson? You got a minute.
More likely to get offensive or defensive snaps than just special teams. Ooh, I think To'oTo'o is going to be in the equation later on this season. I really think they've got plans for him at linebacker. And it really, to me, it could be much earlier, and it kind of comes down to who's healthier at that position, right? And who's making plays. He can certainly command the defense. That's what he's done. He was a team captain in Alabama, called the defense for Saban. But I think down the road, and we'll see how the season plays out. But Xavier Hutchinson, man, dude's been making plays. He's been kind of Mr. Consistent all camp long too, in terms of obviously his work ethic, but just noticing a guy. There's guys like Robert Woods where you're looking to see if he's making plays. You don't know who this dude is. You just see number 19 out there. He just stands out because when the ball's thrown to him, he comes up with a catch. I think we'll see plenty of Xavier Hutchinson at all points if he's healthy during the season.
Oh, you never gave me an answer. You told me both guys we're going to see. Is there one or the other we're going to see more of?
Early on, you're going to see more Hutchinson. I thought I didn't say it just flat out like that. Oh, early on, you're going to see more Hutchinson, and I think you'll see To'oTo'o being more of a special teams contributor. Besides
Pierce and Singletary, is there a running back who's getting buzz? Who is the third running back?
That's a good question. I think contractually, you could kind of just guess that it's probably going to be Mike Boone. But Valladay's looked really good in opportunities that he's gotten. I think he missed some opportunities last week in camp to be like, wow, who's this dude? With some balls that were thrown to him by Davis Mills and Case Keenum on a seam route and a wheel route. Just, I mean, that far. And I was talking to somebody today about that. It's like quarterback, receiver, like who is it? You know what I mean? Like whose fault is that? What do you do in those situations? They need to see guys make plays out of the backfield from that position. But Mike Boone, I was actually looking at him today. He got some good carries, looks really good on inside zone, got a good burst, low center of gravity, controls the ball well. Taking care of the football, by all accounts, from the running backs, has not been an issue this year. And that's, to be expected. You're not really hard hitting in practice. But I would say Mike Boone. I would say Mike Boone's probably your guy.
I mean, we're not going to see guys get hit until really getting hit. I mean, have we seen guys getting hit yet?
Yeah, they were going pretty good on Saturday night, and they were thudding up today. And look, D'Amico, I don't know if you caught, him mic'd up last week, but he's getting on to Henry Toa, on the punch out drill and even on 11 on 11 stuff like, hey, get your elbow up above the wrist and punch it out. He wants to see guys willingly try to create turnovers and make plays. He wants this team to lead the NFL in turnovers created this year. And look, every defensive coach has those kind of lofty goals, but we know how aggressive, a lot of these guys already were defensively last year. The secondary, certainly. You want to see that up front, D-line, linebackers making plays, thudding guys up, being thumpers. And I think we have seen it a little bit. I was impressed how much we saw it on Saturday. It was pretty much for a good solid 45 minutes to an hour at the end of practice, and the fans enjoyed it. I know I did. But yeah, you can only judge so much. We'll have to see a little bit more, obviously, once preseason starts. And, you're back in guys like Boone and Valladay and Dokes get more reps. But I would say just right now, because nobody's really separated from anybody for that third guy, I'd have to say it's probably Mike Boone.
Okay. Who could be the biggest surprise cut?
Man, I don't know, like surprise cuts. Like I'll rattle off a couple and you tell me if they're a surprise to you. Garrett Wallow, in the linebacker core. Wouldn't be surprised at all to see him go. And to be quite honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised to see Christian Kirksey go, because the dude can't you can't make the team if you're not playing. And he's been out for better part of a week now. I feel like he's out there getting his work in every day and watching, taking mental reps. But I mean, they could save a lot of money, about $6 million if they cut him. Maybe be a surprise to a few people, but not me. Those two guys stand out. If I'm missing one, you might throw a name out and be like, oh yeah, but
yeah, Kirksey was the one, but again, you're right. I don't know if he is a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, just because it would make financial sense. I'd have to look at a list like, elsewhere for the depth chart to give you a really good one, if there is one.
All right. Well, those are my minute questions. Was there anything that we missed in the last few days we haven't talked about from camp? Anything on the defensive side, for example, that you think we didn't get around to?
I think we need to focus a little bit more on the interior, but that's almost like a wait and see approach. Now, D'Amico Ryans was asked today, look, hey, alongside Malik Collins, who's your dude? And today was Sheldon Rankins' day to talk to the media. D'Amico basically said, I think he did say, like, Sheldon's our guy. He was talking. It was a short answer. He said something to the effect like, yeah, there's some other guys competing, but Sheldon's our guy. It just kind of threw that in there. So you're looking at Rankins and Collins on the interior. And I was a little bit surprised that I guess, you can flip guys around, but Roy Lopez has looked freaking good, man. It really flashed last week. I think it was last week, and not just Saturday, but I mean, batted 2 balls down on the D line, and you can visibly see how much this guy's body has changed. So everything that people are saying is so true about Lopez. Go look at his Instagram, by the way. He's got a couple of pictures up there, and you can really see the difference. Some pictures last year versus this year. He is just thick and just solid muscle, man. And he's moving well. He's intense out there, making plays. Like I mentioned, batted 2 passes down, stuffing the run. Hassan Ridgeway is another guy. They just signed another defensive tackle today, I do believe, in a late roster move. Third-year guy out of Nebraska. His name's slipping my mind, but, they're getting bodies in there. I get it. Maybe guys getting a little bit more playing time than they'd like, and you want to spread things out a little bit as the preseason begins. here in a few days. But I think the defensive line, especially the interior, we need to focus on a little bit more. I'd like to look at Jonathan Grenard, Jerry Hughes, some of the ends. I'm going to be watching them pretty close on Thursday night just to see technique-wise what they're doing, how much pressure that's putting on the interior and specifically the linebackers. Because if you're going to try to stop the run, and you have to be better at the run this year, that asks a lot of your linebackers and your interior linemen if you're going to put those in so far out. Now their job's to squeeze, stay home, and make sure that nobody gets outside of them. But it's a lot easier said than done. Technique, which Jerry Hughes said the other day, has been a key point of emphasis for D'Amico Ryans in this camp, and not really, making guys think with scheme and stuff like that. Focus on your fundamentals, focus on technique, because when stuff gets crazy, you always have that to fall back on. And his mentality for this defense is just go get the quarterback, stuff the run. So we'll see how that plays out in a defense that they're saying is very simple to learn, similar to the offense, very friendly to quarterback, running back, tight end. We've heard it all, right? I know it's confusing to some. Damian Pierce says it's like the Bible. It's just so much to learn in terms of volume. But, we'll see. There's a lot to evaluate. Really nothing to, I think, really feel comfortable with, Robert, outside of the secondary on this team right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think the big worry on offense for everybody, the quarterback, of course, always a big deal. But really the big concern is this offensive line. We talked about what's going on with the tackles position earlier, but I'm just curious from your perspective and from what you're hearing from people when you're out at camp. I hear people complimenting Kenyon Green a lot, but he is the biggest question on this offensive line moving forward of everybody. I mean, Juice Scruggs, this is year one. Year two, this is a big, big time for Kenyon Green. And I've heard things about him that he maybe, wasn't the most motivated guy last year. He wasn't somebody that, you thought from some of the people that were out there that he wasn't somebody that was real focused. And, this was life and death for him. Do you get a feeling that they like him? They like Kenyon Green? Is there a change in him from his rookie to his second year?
I won't say there's a big change. It's certainly, there was talk of him putting on some weight and getting stronger in the off season. He hasn't popped to me in terms of that, but guys are certainly, paying attention to him. I think you kind of got to read between the lines, take it with a grain of salt until you see it for yourself. I mean, guys are going to protect guys, build confidence, make sure they have their back. They're trying to create a unit here. We all know, and I think it's still apparent this camp, that Kenyon just needs to be better. Pass setting, pass protection. We know what he can do as a run blocker. I think if you're confident in a part of anything of his game, it's that. It's the question of health, and can he be a better pass protector with the rookie quarterback back there now officially in CJ Stroud? I won't say that, he's got the biggest question mark. I mean, there's a pretty big question mark in terms of Juice Scruggs as well. And I say that because, maybe it's built in already because he's a first-year player, but they drafted him where they did for a reason. But given Quessenberry, up until 3 practices ago, whenever he got hurt, all the first-team reps, and Scruggs working with the 2s and mainly 3s at center and guard positions, and now being thrust into the fire, I think there's, some question marks there. But again, he's been running with the 1s the last 2 days. And you know what? He's looked pretty dang good. Stroud, I'd say, if anything, really all the quarterbacks, the last couple of days of practice, the pressure hadn't really been getting to them. They're going to let the plays go, but you can tell pretty easily, when there's a sack, when a guy would have gotten to somebody, you're seeing a lot less of that. Maybe I can recount one time today where I thought, yeah, CJ, that's probably a sack. And I think Mills stayed clean on the second and third team reps too, along with Keenum. But really hadn't been an issue with the 1s. So I think it's a wait and see TBD for Scruggs as well. And then obviously George Fant, he's a new guy. He's been in camp for less than a week or so. You got to see some from him. So an offensive line that on paper you felt pretty good about, now you got these new guys in. You get a second-year player at left guard, a rookie at center, and a new guy at right tackle. And you really feel good about just 2 staple veterans in Mason and Tunsil right now. So I think the offensive line as a group it's a big TBD as far as we go. I did want to mention this because there's something that, I wanted to get to earlier about CJ Stroud. I watched quarterback individual drills today. That's all I watched. They spent probably 20 minutes on special teams. Quarterbacks went to a side field working Gerard Johnson, just throwing to, camp hands, working different routes and stuff like that. And I was paying attention to what the ball looks like out of Case Keenum's hand versus Davis Mills and CJ Stroud. I'm telling you right now, it is easy to see who the veterans are at throwing a football right now. The ball, I'll tell you, if you ask me who throws the best football right now in camp, it's Davis Mills. He is so fundamentally and mechanically sound. The ball just snaps out of his hand. Throws a great ball. Deep, intermediate, short. It's on target. It's there. It's getting there quick.
Wasn't on target last year.
No, but, guys can get better. Guys can improve. I think he's looked really good at throwing the football. Keenum, nobody throws a better deep ball than Case with the touch, just drops it in buckets. Mills has had some of those this camp this year. But specifically with Stroud, and a lot of people don't know this because they're not pouring over, training camp stuff, and they're not looking at all the videos that all of us are putting out on Twitter every day during practice. I'm telling you, if you watch that preseason game on Thursday, I think you're going to probably hear and see a lot of people saying, boy, CJ throws kind of a wobbly ball. He gets the ball out quick. And he's won the job for a reason. He's making right reads, good decisions, on schedule. He's getting the ball to his receivers at the right time. But he just throws a different ball. And I was talking to a few guys earlier today. One of them used to play quarterback in the NFL, Clint Sterner, and just said, I think it's maybe a weight transfer thing. It's where he's releasing the football to. His shoulders kind of flying open a little bit. He's just not as mechanically sound as he should be yet. And so I think it's a question of maybe this is something to keep an eye on throughout the course of the preseason and season when Stroud's on the field, because those kinds of things do matter. They do affect a game. The kind of ball that you're going to throw, if it's outside, inside, all those things. And I'm not a quarterback guru by any stretch, but I'm just saying, keep an eye on that because it's very apparent who the veterans are and who throws the best balls and the snap, the crispness that they have on them. Stroud can get it there. When Stroud's right, nobody throws a better ball. His ball is perfect, but it's the consistency. More times than not, you're going to see a ball with a little bit of wobble to it. And I just want to see how that translates to when the bullets are flying for real, what that looks like, what that means to the team and the offense specifically.
Is it surprising you? Because that's not something that we heard that they were concerned about with CJ Stroud coming out.
No, it doesn't surprise me. It's the first time I've really, paid attention. It doesn't surprise me in the sense that, look, the guy's a rookie and results is what you really seek, right? Is again, like he's staying on schedule. Is the ball getting to the receiver when it needs to get there? Is he throwing guys open? And my gosh, is he throwing guys open? Tank, seems like every ball he throws to Tank, he's like 5, 7, 10 yards away from the football before it's released, and he just breaks and it's there. It's perfect. It's from Stroud or Mills. But mechanics, is that something you can continue to really work on through camp, preseason, regular season, or do you just kind of throw your hands up and say, all right, this is something that we'll wait for the off season because we don't want to mess with the guy and get him thinking too much or, have him swimming in his head a little bit. But I just, again, I think it's something to keep an eye on. I'm not surprised because he's a young guy. I know he's got the MO for being accurate. Okay. But again, it's one thing to be accurate versus, throwing the best crisp football out of anybody. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it means something at the end of the day. I don't know.
Astros split 2-2 against the Yankees this weekend. But the major news coming out right before you and I got started, Shaun, is Corey Jelks is out. They sent him back to Sugar Land and back with the Astros. Get out your 2014 Jon Singleton jerseys because Jon Singleton is back. And frankly, Shaun, he needs to be back because Jelks has been terrible. Jose Abreu, who, everybody proclaimed him, oh, he's back to MVP Abreu. No. He had a few good weeks. This is why you worry about a 36-year-old. He's struggling a little bit. It'd be nice to have somebody that you felt comfortable playing at first base. They don't feel comfortable playing Yonder Diaz. It'd be nice if they did because it'd be great to just be able to get him on the field more. But the big deal, Shaun, with this is Jon Singleton had a 333 average in Sugarland over 32 games. He had 12 home runs, averaging almost 1 in 3 games, home runs, over 1,000 OPS. So Jon Singleton, maybe this is the revival. The guy in his early 30s, could we see a good movie out of this? But that's a good story.
I don't know. I hope it is a good story. I just hope he hits American League pitching better than he did National League pitching when he was up with the Brewers earlier this season, because he stunk whenever they called him up. Looked like Jon Singleton of 2015. It's like dude never left.
Yeah.
He very well just could be a quad A player, man. Just, flat out a really good minor league baseball power hitter. I'd say this, like, it's really good timing to be able to do this if you're Dusty Baker and the Astros. Jelks has been struggling at the plate. You give him an opportunity to go down Sugarland, work some things out, maybe find his swing again, because I think he can contribute. He certainly has contributed to this point in major ways for this Astros ball club and provided, some consistency to a team that desperately needed it whenever they were without Jordan, whenever they were without Altuve, and guys like Bregman or Tucker were struggling and scuffling. But it's another huge thing to be able to take a gamble, roll the dice, if you can even call it that. Just take a shot on Jonathan Singleton with Jordan and Altuve back and Tucker doing his thing and Bregman playing ball. And, you're getting regular contributions from your dudes. Chas McCormick has been amazing. I mean, they're getting contributions all over.
Jake Myers with 2 3-run home runs. And I'm sure that expedited Jolks into the minors, and Jokes just could not get out of that slump. They kept giving him shots, and he just could not get out of it. And I just want to say this on Singleton. You said you hope he does better than National League pitching. He had 32 plate appearances. He had 29 official ABs in the National League. It was the first time in 8 years he'd seen Major League pitching. It takes a while. I think to get used to the speed and the breaking pitch and whatever. And it might take a while with the Astros. You're going to have to give him a few more than 5 or 6 at-bats here to get him and see what he can do. But he's a lefty and Abreu's a righty. And if you want to see him against right-handers, you're going to see a lot more right-handers than left-handers. So if you want to give him a real shot here, you have a chance to give him a real shot to try to do something.
Yeah, no question. And look, Milwaukee's in the middle of a division race as well themselves. And I don't know their situation, from a depth chart standpoint, why they maybe couldn't afford to give him a little bit longer of an opportunity to figure out if, he could be a contributor down the home stretch for them. But nevertheless, they made the determination. And again, I think it's a great situation for the Astros where you get 2 of your hosses back, over the course of the last few weeks, and Altuve and Jordan, and you can take a shot with a guy that's scuffling. You've given Abreu every opportunity possible to figure himself out and to get himself going, to be that consistent guy that he's been throughout his career. And he just hadn't put it together. And maybe he gets it back, one day, but maybe he doesn't. And maybe you find lightning in a bottle in Jon Singleton. You don't know unless you try. The thing is, this lineup's good enough to where you don't have to rely upon, that one guy. If it's Abreu, if it's Singleton or a Jelks, you get it from anybody else and everybody else with this lineup. So, we'll see. Fingers crossed. I hope, if I took away anything from this weekend with Verlander, making his debut and Urquidy coming back, it's give it a little bit of time. You get 2 new guys. I don't know what we necessarily expected out of the situation. I mean, I guess I know we do because we expect to win every single night. But if we're being realistic, I like what I saw from Urquidy, to be honest with you, in terms of his velocity and, going into a tough situation, tough stage on the road for your first game back in months. And Verlander gave you every opportunity, to go get a dub. And sometimes it falls that way. But I like the fact that those 2 guys are in the rotation. And I don't know if I agree with sending JP down versus like a Hunter, as a bullpen guy. But as long as they're going to be asked to contribute in positive ways and meaningful ways, I guess I'm here for it, because either one of those guys, both of them really have to load manage them going forward, because they're already right at their threshold of career highs innings pitched from the minors, albeit. But it's there. It's a real thing. They're young. I know JP's not too young, but I'm 40. He's 28. He's young to me. And so you got to be smart about the whole thing and optimize, your best situation for success in the postseason. But hey, you're not as close as you were a week ago when you were a half game out of the Rangers. You were tied with the Rangers, so they still have some work to do. And that 3-game series with the Rangers, Robert, I think it's the second or third to last series of the season. That's getting bigger and bigger and bigger now that the Astros go day by day and they're continuing to look up at Texas.
Yeah, there was one thing that we failed to get into with the Kendall Graveman trade, and I just like I said at the time, I didn't mind trading Corey Lee, but was Kendall Graveman worth giving up somebody like a Corey Lee? And that's the real question, because Graveman has not looked good so far his first couple of outings. And granted, it's just 2 outings, but Graveman has not looked good. And I need to remind everybody out there, Kendall Graveman, he had a great year that year with the Astros and the Mariners, but that's an outlier. That is an outlier because his career whip is 1.329. That's not good for a reliever at all. So, Kendall Graveman, if he can get that magic back from that 1 year, but this could be a Rafael Montero, maybe not as bad as Montero's been this year, but that's the concern with him.
Yeah. I just have to believe they saw something from him this year and felt like, you know what, we could just harness this. We could really use a guy like that, with that kind of stuff on the back end of the bullpen. And
I hope it wasn't that Dusty pushed for it, because he saw he had like one great season, and that postseason was fantastic. You go back to those numbers, he was great in the postseason for the Astros. Look at him. The whip was unbelievable. The ERA was unbelievable. But, you can't – that's the thing about baseball. You can't get romantic about a guy that gave you a nice few months. You have to look at the baseball card.
No, yeah, you do, and I get it. I wouldn't be surprised if Dusty did push for him, though. I mean, you heard what he'd said, and
Sure.
you know how important of a guy, a person, from a personality and mentorship role he was for the Astros back then, and a player's manager, a guy who prides himself on, maybe not being the best in-game manager of all time, but maybe being the best people manager of all time. How much value he puts on something like that. And that's all at the end of the day to say the same thing. You got to have a pulse of your team. And if he felt like the Astros needed something like that in the bullpen, then you go out and do it, because it's about now. And it's not about, 2 or 3 years from now when guys can contribute. The whole prospect thing that we talked about with Drew Gilbert. If it's him or Corey Lee or Ryan Clifford, whoever the case may be, the window's now, it's open. Let's crawl through that thing. So I get it. I think if he pushed for anything and stood on the table for anything, I don't think he had to, because I think it was Crane, once he figured out how much money the Astros were going to be getting in return, and just for those 2 prospects, was Justin Verlander. But I think Dusty's got to be happy with getting both of those guys. Maybe not necessarily the results, but again, you mentioned it's only two outings for Graveman. You give it time. It's not always a quick fix. There's still a lot of baseball to be played. I think the guy's going to be more part of the solution than the problem going forward. You have to believe it. And you know what? If it's not, then at the end of the season, you can kind of start crossing things off like, all right, here's where that was a mistake. That was a mistake. That was a mistake. And I'm talking about Montero. I'm talking about Abreu, and I'm talking about maybe Graveman. We'll see. And, other decisions, maybe you look back on this and taking France out of the rotation is a bad deal too. But
yeah, this is not a decision that it is going to be looked upon as far as anybody else but Dana Brown. It might have been Dusty had some say in it, but this is
right.
Of the 2 trades that were made, this one is going to be more on Dana Brown's shoulders than either one of them. So we'll see what happens with Kendall Graveman. And, his stuff is definitely better than Seth Martinez. So you could still say you upgraded. Is he going to be better than Ryan Stanek? Probably. But that doesn't mean it's worth trading Corey Lee to get a Kendall Graveman. The other thing that I got to talk about before we finish the show, Simone Biles. I'm such a fan of hers. It could have snuck under the radar for some people this weekend, but she was back in competitive competition after taking a 2-year break. Gymnastics, a 2-year break is a long, long time.
For anything. Yeah.
It is a long time not to be competing against the best in the world. And this girl just does what she came out. She looked better than everybody else. She kicked everybody's butt. She's just so awesome. She brought that joy that Simone Biles can bring. And remember, we talked to her 9 years ago. She's been around kicking butt. When we talked to her 9 years ago, she had already won 2 world championships, I believe, at that point. So this has been going on for 11. This is not supposed to happen in gymnastics. You talk about what Tom Brady did. You talk about what Phil Mickelson did when he just won the championship. And Tiger Woods, I think Phil was with the PGA Championship, Tiger with the Masters and what they did. And that window is staying open. But, man, that's golf. This is gymnastics. This is women's gymnastics. This is unbelievable.
Yeah. There's, I don't think, really a question now, who the greatest.
No, that question ended long ago.
and what I would like, I mean, you might know the answer to this, but the synonymous name and Houston product always comes up as Mary Lou Retton, right? Well, the time that Mary Lou, was great, was a force in that sport, can that rival what Simone has done and continues to do? Like, how much longer can Simone Biles continue to dominate, women's gymnastics? Maybe that's an open-ended question still, because she's still obviously at the top of her game and, athleticism. But I think that's going to be really the thing that we celebrate the most, is that not only was she dominant, was she great, but for how long she did it. And I mean, she might have, another 5-7 years in her. I don't know. She's just an athletic freak, an ageless wonder. And it's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, there's no question the Mount Rushmore of great Houston athletes is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it seems like, every year. But in terms of those native Houstonians, Simone Biles, you better make room for her up there too.
Yeah, Simone Biles right now is the top of the Mount, because she's better than anybody else at her sport, and it's not even close. And while I love Akeem Olajuwon, he's not the best ever in the NBA. While I love Jose Altuve or Craig Biggio or Jeff Bagwell or whatever, they're not the best. Simone, JJ Watt, he's in that conversation because he's close to the top of anybody at his sport, at his position. But man, yeah, what she's done is just unbelievable. As far as Team USA, we haven't talked about them at all. Been keeping up with everything that's going on with Team USA, and they lost to Sweden. And you could say they played really good against Sweden. I thought they played great against Sweden. But guess what? When you kind of didn't do your job in the first 3 games and you had to play against one of the best teams right off the bat, this is how you lose. This is how you're out of the tournament quickly, the first round of knockout stage. And then, Shaun, the Megan Rapinos that you're counting on to make a shot when it matters, because she's the veteran, just to totally miss the net. Sophia Smith to totally miss the net. They missed the net when you had a chance to put that team away. These are your two of your bigger strikers. You got nothing from Emily Morgan in this. I mean, the big scores and strikers just didn't do that was the issue with the USA team more than anything. It wasn't defense. It wasn't the middle backs. It was the grade A people at the top that just didn't do their job.
No, you're right. I watched some of that game, not all of it, but I saw the end, and Rapinoe summed it up about as well as you possibly could have for a person in that situation to miss the net, calling it felt like a sick joke. It did, watching it. It was like, you're not even giving yourself a chance. And that's what's so tough, because you can live with, this is the best you've got, and the goalie just beat you. The goalie guessed right. They stopped you. But to not give yourself a chance, not once, but twice in that situation, that hurts. That hurts. I don't know if there's a worse way to really lose when you have those opportunities and you just don't give yourself a chance. It's like a golfer, leaving a putt short. If you want to go that route, and it's just that stings, and I can't imagine it. But it's definitely been a fun ride, watching those women compete. They've really, I think, got a lot of people to pay attention. Certainly over the last few years that otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fun, but this is not as fun as it has been because, the other teams won World Cups. They're coming off winning a couple of World Cups.
Yeah.
And the other part about this is when you hear somebody like Carly Lloyd, former Houston Dash player, Houstonian Carly Lloyd, one of the greatest that we've seen in the sport, take some shots at this team for not doing what they're supposed to do and for taking stuff for granted, for coming in there with high and mighty when maybe they shouldn't have doing that. I heard Glenn Davis, our local Houstonian here that covers soccer about as well as anybody, say he agrees with a lot of what Carly Lloyd says. That's concerning. And this whole Team USA women soccer program's got to get it back together, and they got to get that killer instinct back.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard otherwise, but I always kind of wait, reserve judgment when you hear things like that. They came in too hot, high and mighty, that sort of thing. And because that's the perception, right? That's kind of what you think, all the attention they get, and then they just kind of fall flat the way that they did. It's one thing to say like, hey, these women know how to execute better than they did. They didn't play their best. They should know better in certain situations. They should be able to make certain plays. I get all that. But to say that you were basically, ready to be gifted this opportunity, I reserve judgment on that because even though you haven't heard otherwise, you don't really know that that's the situation. Obviously, these people that cover it on the regular maybe know better than some of us, but unless you really know what's going on in that team, regardless of the sport, men or women, I just never liked that sort of criticism.
Well, when it's Carly Lloyd, though, and 2 years ago she was there and she said, I saw some of this stuff starting to seep in a couple of years ago. I mean, to me, that's pretty telling when it's, other people making that criticism, but this is Carly Lloyd, who, was just she was the reason why we were winning World Cups.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, she would know better than most, but again, it's 2 years ago. And I don't know, like if you polled every woman in that locker room, would they say the same thing, gun to their head, if they're being truly honest? Like that's really what it comes down to, because only they know if they put it all on the line or if they quite simply deserve that outcome, if they deserve that fate. And hey, look, that's the beauty of sports, but that's also the ugly side of sports, man. But that's why we all watch. So for this group of women, it's going to be the last opportunity they have. Unfortunately, they came up short. And like Rapinoe said, man, it was a sick joke. Just not give yourself a chance in those two situations. It hurt.
Yeah. So looking forward to Texans preseason, an actual game in 3 days. And me and Shaun are going to be live for the post-game show. So make sure you're subscribed so you get notifications for it. And we're going to push that out as soon as the game's over with, as quickly as we can push it out. So be ready, be prepared. We get to talk about CJ Stroud, how he looks, how the rest of the offense looks, what did D'Amico Ryan's team looks like in a real type of situation against another team, not just their own guys. Is the defense really, really good, or is the Texans offense maybe a little bit of a concern right now? And it's not the defense being so good, but it's the Texans offense being bad. That's what we're going to find out, Shaun.
Yeah. All you can do is, just watch the game, man. And I think all the time, like there's always something really good. Maybe not the last 3 years, because I want to pretend like that didn't happen. But in typical normal NFL training camps with the Texans, there's always a lot of really good things to get excited about. And then preseason hits, regular season hits, and what you thought you were seeing wasn't necessarily the case. But I know this, the honeymoon, it might still be ongoing for the D'Amico Ryans effect and Stroud and Will Anderson. I think more than not, it's going to be a pretty good hit, man. So I think we got a lot of really fun things to watch for this season. So I'm banking on that.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.